What if the monster lived next door, polite, charming, seemingly normal, and only killed those who deserved it? Dexter introduced the world to a killer who isn't a villain in the traditional sense, but a man guided by a strict moral code. By day, Dexter Morgan works as a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department, examining crime scenes with precision and calm. By night, he hunts murderers who have escaped justice, following the rules his adoptive father, Harry, instilled in him. Dexter doesn't kill impulsively. He kills with control, discipline, and purpose. The brilliance and the danger of Dexter lies in his narration. He lets us into his mind, showing us not only his logic, but his justifications, his fears, and the darkness he calls the dark passenger. Through his eyes, we begin to understand him, and uncomfortably, we find ourselves rooting for him. The show isn't just about killing. It's about the choices we make to survive, the lies we tell ourselves to justify them, and the fine line between justice and obsession. Dexter Morgan's story begins not with choice, but with trauma. As a toddler, he witnessed a brutal murder of his mother, Laura Moser, inside a shipping container in Miami. A chainsaw attack that left her dismembered and his young mind exposed to unspeakable horror. Trapped alongside his older brother Brian for days in the aftermath, Dexter survived while Brian was institutionalized, shaping a life defined by absence, loss, and fear. Adopted by police officer Harry Morgan, Dexter displayed early signs of what would later be called psychopathy, a lack of empathy, violent impulses, and a fascination with death. Harry quickly realized that Dexter's urges could not be eradicated, but they could be channeled. He created what would become known as the Code, a strict moral framework that allowed Dexter to act on his dark passenger, but only against those who deserved it, murderers who escaped justice. Every kill had to be controlled, every trace erased, and no innocent could ever be harmed. Under this guidance, Dexter learned to mask his nature, to follow rules with precision, and to perfect his ability to blend into the world of the living, all while carrying the darkness within him. What began as survival and control would, over the years, become a defining structure of his life, shaping the man who would walk the line between monster and vigilante. By the time we meet Dexter Morgan, he has already perfected the art of appearing normal. He smiles at coworkers, brings donuts to the office, and speaks with quiet politeness, not because any of it comes naturally, but because he has studied how people behave and learned how to imitate them. Normalcy is not who Dexter is. It is a disguise. Working as a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department gives him the perfect cover. His job places him close to violence while shielding him from suspicion, granting him access to crime scenes, police databases, and information about killers who escape justice. Blood, which unsettles most people, is where Dexter feels most at ease. Inside his mind, Dexter refers to the urge that drives him as a dark passenger, a constant presence that never sleeps, never leaves, and never argues. It is not temptation or impulse, but something he believes is fundamental to his identity. Dexter does not struggle against it. He manages it. He carefully constructs a public persona, observing how others express emotion and mirroring those reactions when necessary. Laughter, concern, empathy, all of it is rehearsed. The audience hears his internal narration and understands a truth that no one around him can see. Every interaction is performance. Every relationship filtered through calculation. The person closest to him is his sister, Deborah Morgan, and the contrast between them could not be sharper. Deborah is emotional, impulsive, and openly driven by her need to succeed as a detective. She believes deeply in justice and clings to clear distinctions between right and wrong, never realizing that the person she trusts most lives entirely in the gray. Dexter's bond with Deborah is one of the few things that feels genuine, even though it is built on deception. She grounds him in the human world, reminding him of what normal life looks like, even if he can never fully share in it. Miami itself becomes part of Dexter's camouflage. The bright sunlight, vivid colors, and relaxed atmosphere create the illusion of safety, making it easier for darkness to exist unnoticed. Beneath the surface, Dexter follows a strict ritual. He observes his targets, confirms their guilt beyond doubt, and collects evidence to satisfy the code Harry taught him. Only when every rule has been met does he prepare the kill room, sealing it in plastic and confronting his victim with the truth of what they have done. The process is calm and methodical, not driven by cruelty but by control. This is where Dexter quietly reshapes the audience's perspective. We are not watching a man lose control of his urges. We are watching someone who has mastered them. Dexter does not kill in moments of rage or chaos. He kills with patience, precision, and certainty. And slowly, almost without noticing, we stop seeing him as a danger. We begin to see him as an answer to a system that fails. In doing so, the show delivers its most unsettling idea. A monster with rules can feel safer than a world without them. The first true test of Dexter's carefully controlled world arrives with the ice truck killer, a murderer whose crimes feel disturbingly personal. Bodies begin appearing across Miami, drained of blood and arranged with surgical precision. There is no mess, no chaos, no panic, only control. For the first time, Dexter is unsettled not by the brutality of the crimes, but by how familiar they feel. This killer operates without blood, without emotion, and without fear of discovery, mirroring Dexter in a way no one else ever has. As the investigation unfolds, the ice truck killer begins to toy with Dexter directly. Crime scenes are staged for his attention, messages left not for the police, but for him. Dexter realizes he is no longer just observing the hunt. He is part of it. The killer understands him, anticipates him, and seems less interested in killing than in being recognized. What begins as professional curiosity slowly turns into something far more dangerous. Connection. The truth, when it is revealed, shatters the foundation of Dexter's identity. The ice truck killer is Brian Moser, Dexter's biological brother, the other child who survived their mother's murder. Unlike Dexter, Brian grew up without Harry Morgan, without guidance, without the code. Where Dexter learned control, Brian learned freedom. He kills without rules, without justification, and without regret. He is not what Dexter fears becoming. He is what Dexter could have been. Brian does not want to destroy Dexter. He wants to reunite with him. He offers Dexter something no one else ever has: acceptance without conditions. Together, they could kill without restraint, without hiding, and without lies. For the first time, Dexter is forced to confront the truth behind his moral certainty. The code was never inevitable. It was a choice made for him. And now, he must decide whether to keep living by it. When Dexter chooses to kill Brian, he does not do it out of anger or self-defense. He does it because the code demands it. Brian has killed innocents, including Deborah, who he had targeted without Dexter's knowledge. In choosing the code over blood, Dexter proves that he is no longer defined solely by trauma or instinct, but by the rules that shaped him. Yet, the cost of that choice lingers. He has killed the only person who fully understood him, severing the last tie to a life without masks. By the end of the ice truck killer arc, Dexter makes its intentions clear. This is not a story about stopping evil. It is a story about control, identity, and the lies we tell ourselves to survive. Dexter wins, but he is more isolated than ever. The monster with rules has chosen order over freedom, and in doing so, he locks himself permanently inside the life Harry built for him. As Dexter's world expands beyond secrecy and ritual, his understanding of himself begins to shift. Harry's influence lingers long after his death, appearing as a constant internal guide, reinforcing the code and warning Dexter whenever he strays. But over time, that voice grows less authoritative. Dexter is no longer a child following instructions. He is an adult questioning whether the rules that shaped him are enough. He begins searching for something Harry never gave him, proof that he can live among others without destroying them. That search leads him to Arthur Mitchell, known as the Trinity Killer, a man responsible for decades of murders across the country. To the world, Arthur is invisible, a devoted husband, a loving father, a respected member of his church. To Dexter, he is a revelation. Arthur represents a future Dexter desperately wants to believe is possible, a life where killing and normalcy can coexist. Instead of eliminating him quickly, Dexter does something dangerous. He studies him. As Dexter inserts himself into Arthur's life, the illusion begins to crack. Arthur's family is not built on love, but fear and control. His children are broken. His marriage is a performance, and his rituals are fueled by self-hatred rather than discipline. Trinity is not a man balancing two worlds. He is collapsing under the weight of them. Still, Dexter refuses to see the warning signs, convinced that Arthur holds the answers Harry never provided. This obsession proves catastrophic. While Dexter hesitates, Arthur strikes back in a way Dexter never anticipates. Rita, Dexter's wife, is murdered in their home, killed not as part of Arthur's ritual, but as a consequence of Dexter's interference. Her death marks a turning point the series can never reverse. For the first time, Dexter's secret does not just end lives he deems guilty. It destroys someone truly innocent. In the aftermath, the code loses its authority. Dexter is forced to confront a truth he has avoided since childhood. Control is an illusion. No matter how carefully he plans, no matter how strictly he follows the rules, the damage spreads outward. Harry's guidance failed to protect those around him, and Dexter's belief that he can manage his darkness without consequence collapses. The Trinity Killer is eventually killed, but the victory is hollow. Arthur's death offers no closure, no lesson neatly learned. It leaves only absence, a reminder that Dexter's attempt to build a life on top of violence was doomed from the start. Chapter 4 marks the moment Dexter stops pretending his protagonist can have both worlds. The father figure Dexter's search for did not save him. He exposed the cost of believing he ever could. After Rita's death, Dexter can no longer hide behind routine or ritual. The careful balance he once maintained begins to unravel, not because his urges grow stronger, but because the consequences of acting on them finally become impossible to ignore. He continues killing, but without the certainty he once had. The code, once a source of clarity, now feels hollow, a set of rules that fail to protect the people he loved. Dexter starts to realize that Harry's guidance was never about justice, only containment, and even that has proven fragile. As Dexter's inner world fractures, Deborah's life moves closer to the truth. Rising through the ranks of Miami Metro, she becomes more competent, more confident, and more dangerous to the secret Dexter has guarded his entire life. Deborah's belief in justice is tested repeatedly as she encounters corruption, moral compromise, and cases that blur the lines she once held sacred. Unknowingly, she begins walking the same moral gray territory Dexter has lived in for years. The inevitable collision comes when Deborah discovers Dexter in the act. Confronted not with a suspicion, but with undeniable reality. The brother she trusted is a serial killer, and the system she dedicated her life to suddenly feels meaningless. Deborah's reaction is not rage, but devastation. Her sense of identity collapses as she struggles to reconcile her love for Dexter with the horror of what he is. For Dexter, the discovery changes everything. The one person he believed anchored him to humanity now sees him clearly and cannot unsee it. From that moment forward, the code truly collapses. Deborah becomes complicit not by choice, but by loyalty. She covers for Dexter, lies for him, and compromises herself in ways that slowly destroy her from the inside. What Harry feared most comes true. The darkness spreads. Dexter's belief that he could isolate his actions from the people around him is proven false, and Deborah becomes the clearest example of the damage he causes simply by existing. As law enforcement closes in and the walls tighten, Dexter's inner narration grows quieter. The confidence that once defined him fades, replaced by doubt and guilt he never believed himself capable of feeling. He no longer kills because it feels right. He kills because stopping would mean facing who he truly is without the protection of rules or ritual. Dexter fully abandons the illusion of moral control. The code no longer protects the innocent, and it no longer protects Dexter. It only delays the inevitable reckoning. The monster with rules has lost the one thing that made him believable, the idea that his darkness could be contained without destroying everyone close to him. By the time the series reaches its original conclusion, Dexter Morgan has lost almost everything that once gave him purpose. His sister Deborah is physically alive but emotionally broken, crippled by trauma and forced to confront the reality of the brother she loved. His son, Harrison, remains a child too young to understand the darkness he has inherited, yet old enough to bear its consequences in the future. Dexter himself stands at crossroads, not as a hero or a villain, but as a man stripped of any illusion that control can save those he loves. In the finale, Dexter chooses exile. He fakes his own death, leaving Miami behind, leaving the life he built and the people he cared for in ruins. The bright, artificial sun of Florida fades into the gray isolation of the Pacific Northwest. Here, far from everything he once knew, Dexter becomes a lumberjack, anonymous, silent, and emotionally dead. He is alive, but only in body. The mind that once rationalized murder, that once justified violence and named the code, is now a hollow echo. The monster survives, but at a cost that feels unbearable to the audience. The original ending sparked outrage and debate because it denies the closure viewers expected. Dexter does not face punishment, and yet he does not find redemption. Instead, he experiences the slow erosion of his humanity. His survival is meaningless because survival alone cannot undo the lives destroyed by his actions, nor can repair the damage he has inflicted on those he loved. The code, once a lifeline, has failed completely. In this way, the finale underscores one of Dexter's most unsettling truths. Control is an illusion. Rules cannot contain darkness forever, and even a monster with a code cannot escape the consequences of his nature. By leaving Dexter alive yet empty, the show refuses to simplify morality or deliver easy justice. It forces the audience to confront the cost of complicity, the uncomfortable idea that someone like Dexter could exist in the world, and that sometimes survival itself is the ultimate punishment. Years after faking his death, Dexter Morgan has tried to bury the dark passenger deep beneath the snow and silence of Iron Lake, New York. Gone are the neon lights of Miami, the sweltering heat, and the constant reminders of blood. Here, Dexter is Jim Lindsay, a quiet shopkeeper with a routine life, raising his son Harrison from afar and carefully suppressing the urges that once defined him. For the first time, he experiences something close to peace, or at least the illusion of it. But old habits die hard, and the quiet town conceals new challenges that will test everything Dexter believes about control and morality. The arrival of Harrison forces Dexter to confront the consequences of the life he left behind. Harrison, shaped by his own trauma and haunted by his father's absence, begins to show signs of the same darkness that drove Dexter for decades. Father and son, once separated by necessity and fear, are drawn together in a fragile, uneasy bond. A bond that forces Dexter to face the generational cost of his actions. He sees in Harrison what he might have been without Harry's guidance, and what Harrison could become at the darkness is left unchecked. Despite his best efforts, Dexter is drawn back into the cycle of killing. New threats emerge. Murderers who slip through the law. Criminals whose actions echo the very victims of Dexter's past. And the dark passenger awakens. Unlike before, Dexter is older, wearier, and painfully aware that his decisions no longer exist in isolation. Every kill risks corrupting his son, destroying his remaining connection to humanity, and repeating the mistakes that ruin his life in Miami. The story moves relentlessly toward its final reckoning. Harrison's life is imperiled, and Dexter realizes that protecting him requires confronting the ultimate truth. His son cannot inherit the code, and Dexter himself cannot escape the consequences of decades of violence. In the end, Dexter dies, not as a hero, not as a legend, but as a cautionary tale. His death is final, absolute, and unavoidable, a stark contrast to the ambiguous exile of the original finale. He leaves behind a world irrevocably shaped by his choices, and a son forced to reckon with the legacy of the monster his father once was. Dexter, New Blood closes the circle. It strips away any illusions of control, redemption, or legacy. The code, the rituals, the careful balance of life and death, none of it can outrun the consequences. Dexter dies, but the story lingers, reminding us that darkness cannot be contained, that choices echo across generations, and that even monsters are not immune to the reckoning they so long avoided. Interesting trivias. Michael C. Hall's serial killer history. Before playing Dexter, Michael C. Hall starred in 6 Feet Under, where he also played a character closely tied to death. Hall has said that the experience helped him prepare for the complex, morally ambiguous mind of Dexter. Based on a novel, but only loosely, the series was adapted from Jeff Lindsay's novel Darkly Dreaming Dexter, but after the first season, the show diverged significantly, creating original storylines like the Trinity Killer arc and the Ice Truck Killer storyline. Internal monologue inspiration. Dexter's narration was inspired by classic noir films and novels. The internal voice creates intimacy with a character who otherwise seems cold and detached, forcing audiences into complicity. The code was realistic. Writers consulted with psychologists and criminologists to ensure Dexter's Code of Harry felt plausible. It reflects real-world ideas about control and channeling antisocial impulses. Miami as a character. The The city was deliberately chosen for its visual contrast. The sun-soaked beaches and pastel-colored buildings serve as a stark backdrop to the series' dark and violent stories. John Lithgow's Emmy-winning performance. The Trinity Killer arc is widely regarded as the high point of the series. Lithgow won an Emmy for his portrayal of a charismatic, terrifying killer, highlighting the duality Dexter himself struggles with. The Blood Slide Collection. Unlike many fictional killers who collect trophies, Dexter's blood slides are symbolic of control and ritual, not vanity. Each slide represents mastery over chaos, a testament to his obsession with order. Rita's death shocked everyone. The murder of Rita in Season 4 was kept secret from cast members and Michael C. Hall described filming the aftermath as one of the most emotionally challenging experiences of the show. The lumberjack ending controversy. The original series finale sparked widespread debate. Fans felt Dexter's survival and isolation were unsatisfying, which eventually led to the creation of Dexter. New Blood provided a more definitive conclusion. Frozen setting of New Blood, Dexter. New Blood takes place in Iron Lake, New York, to reflect Dexter's attempt at emotional and behavioral suppression. The cold, isolated town is the opposite of Miami's heat, symbolizing his emotional isolation. Harrison's dark legacy. Harrison's emergence in New Blood mirrors Dexter's early traits. Showrunner Clyde Phillips intended Harrison to represent the consequences of generational trauma, showing that the darkness Dexter carried cannot be fully escaped. Death is final this time. Unlike the ambiguous ending of the original series, Dexter, New Blood has Dexter died definitively. The creators intentionally chose a conclusive ending to explore accountability and the cost of a life defined by secrecy and killing. Realistic forensic details. Dexter's day job as a blood spatter analyst is grounded in real forensic science. Writers worked with consultants to ensure the crime scenes, blood analysis, and investigative methods were accurate, adding realism to the story. The show's moral experiment. Dexter has been described as a moral thought experiment. It challenges the audience to question whether it's possible to empathize with a killer if he only targets the guilty, and what that says about our own judgments of justice. Michael C. Hall's physical transformation. Hall underwent subtle physical changes over the series to reflect Dexter's emotional evolution, from neat and controlled in early seasons to more weathered and haunted by the later arcs, especially in New Blood. Dexter is not a story about monsters or killers in a traditional sense. It is a story about control, choice, and the fragile line between justice and obsession. Over the course of his life, Dexter Morgan taught us something uncomfortable, that a man can be both relatable and horrifying, both disciplined and monstrous. From the trauma that shaped him, to the rules Harry instilled, to the people he loved and ultimately lost, Dexter's journey is a study in consequence, in how one life, no matter how carefully managed, ripples outward in ways that cannot be contained. What makes Dexter unforgettable is not his killings, but the moral mirror he holds up to the audience. Through his eyes, we question our own sense of right and wrong, wonder how far we might go if we believed ourselves justified, and confront the dark possibilities within the structures we rely on to keep order. In New Blood, the story comes full circle. Control is an illusion, secrets eventually unravel, and the cost of a life defined by darkness is unavoidable.